Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today's video, getting to the top 30 running backs for week 14 of the fantasy season. An important one for you, the last regular season week. If you guys are in need of a win this week, go join the Discord. Link is down below in the description. We're going to be running a Twitch live stream at 4 p.m. on Friday. I'll help set your lineups for this very, very important week. So again, go join the Discord, shoot me a DM in the Discord with your lineup, and we'll look that over and get you ready for this final week of the regular season on Friday at 4 o'clock in the OwnersBox Twitch account. Again, we'll get to each and every guy here for this week, helping you with start-sit decisions at the running back position. If you guys are new, be sure to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed, and go check out our friends over at Betfred. If you sign up at Betfred, deposit $50, bet $50, they're going to give you $250 in free bets. We're coming close to the playoffs here, late in the season. You're going to be wanting to bet on these games, maybe bet on a Super Bowl winner. If you haven't checked out our previous video with a Super Bowl prediction, definitely go check that out. Be a great place to bet that $50 with Betfred. So that link is down below to go sign up. So go sign up with Betfred. All right, getting to the top 6. Starting with Derrick Henry going against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags have been, honestly, a pretty average defensive unit against the run this season. A lot of that comes into their front 4 and even their front 7. I like their linebackers. I like Devin Lloyd, but they're a terrible tackling team. The worst tackling team in the NFL. 19th in fantasy points allowed, 13th in rushing DVOA. So a positive matchup here for Derrick Henry as we get into this late stretch. At 2, Christian McCaffrey. Despite a tough matchup against the Bucs, who are 5th in fantasy points allowed, they are 19th in run defense grade. I do think McCaffrey in this offense now with Brock Purdy at quarterback, the run game is the focal point. I think they'll still find plenty of success on the ground, and if not, McCaffrey will be plenty involved as a pass catcher as well, as we saw last week. At 3, Ramondre Stevenson going against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals 21st in fantasy points allowed, 19th in passing or in rushing DVOA. A matchup here for Stevenson where they can run the ball effectively, and as well we know how involved Ramondre is as a pass catcher. This Patriots offense constantly checking the ball down. Definitely love Ramondre Stevenson in this matchup against the Cardinals, one that they have a chance to win here as well. At 4, Saquon Barkley. Barkley against the Eagles. An NFC East battle here. I expect to be relatively low scoring, but we do have a plus matchup for the run game for the Giants. I expect Barkley to see plenty of volume against the Eagles, who are 16th in fantasy points allowed to running backs, 23rd in rushing DVOA. A plus matchup here for Barkley for sure. At 5, Nick Chubb against the Bengals. The Bengals, serviceable run defense, 15th in fantasy points allowed, 22nd in run defense grade. So a mediocre matchup here for Chubb, but one where I expect them to continue to feed him the ball, as it will be pretty tough to move the ball through the air against this Bengals team. We've seen that from a number of teams this year, including the Chiefs last week. At 6, Tony Pollard. We've got a great matchup here for these Dallas Cowboys running backs. Love to see that. I've got both of them in my top 10. And you got to have them here against Houston. Dead last against the run and fantasy points allowed to running backs too. This team is terrible against the run. We got a plus matchup here for the run game and a matchup where this Cowboys team is expected to dominate and lead by plenty of points. So they're going to be running the ball a ton in this game. I would expect both of these guys to see at least 15 carries and maybe even 20 touches in this game. Plenty of volume for Pollard, and Pollard has been great and effective in every touch he's had. At 7, Austin Eckler. The Chargers can't run the ball right now. The offensive line is in a really bad spot, and the Dolphins are a very good run defense. 5th in run defense grade, 14th in fantasy points allowed to running backs. Eckler will do his thing as a receiver. Mike Williams is going to practice this week, so if he is back, that will have an impact on Eckler's upside as a pass catcher, but not enough to take him outside of my top 10. At 8, Joe Mixon. I know I expected him to be back last week with a concussion. I definitely expect him to be back this week. P. Ryan has been good in his absence, but I don't expect that to have an impact on Mixon as the number 1 option at the running back position for the Bengals. And we know about the Browns. They're a terrible run defense. 29th in fantasy points allowed, 31st in rushing DVOA. It's a very good matchup for them on the ground. I expect Joe Mixon to be efficient when he does get back onto the field here. At 9, like I mentioned, Zeke is in my top 10. 32nd in fantasy points. This team is terrible against the run. I think you can have 2 top 10 running backs this week. I truly believe that. Both of these guys are going to find the end zone this week and be efficient on the ground. At 10, Dalvin Cook against the Lions. The Vikings are underdogs this week. They're dogs, 2.5-point dogs. The books do not think this team is going to win on the road in Detroit. Very surprising, but a good matchup here for the run game. This game is expected to be tight. There's a potential the Vikings win this game. I think a lot of you are going to be shocked to hear me say this, that Betfred has them as dogs. But You can go bet on them if you want to with the Vikings as underdogs. You get plus money on it. But Cook in a pretty decent matchup here. Lions are 25th in rushing DVOA, 18th in fantasy points allowed. So a good matchup here for Cook regardless. At 11, Josh Jacobs going against the Los Angeles Rams on the road in Los Angeles. This is a Rams defense that's very, very good against the run. They've proven that week in and week out. They're 9th in fantasy points allowed. They're the number 1 run defense from PFF in terms of run defense grade. Jacobs is still going to see volume. That's this Josh McDaniels offense, but the efficiency might not be there, and I don't expect it to be anywhere near what it was last week against the Chargers, and why I had Jacobs as like a top 3 back on the week. At 12, Jeff Wilson. We keep attacking this Chargers run defense that is terrible and might lose Sebastian Joseph Day this week. One of the two pillars they got from that interior D-line in Austin Johnson and Sebastian Joseph Day might be out this week, and their D-line depth is completely gutted. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert are must-start guys this week, undoubtedly. I know Wilson had that down week last week. Mostert even out-touched him. Don't expect that to continue here. I still think Wilson's the number 1 back in this offense. We got the Chargers 31st in fantasy points allowed to running backs and 31st in run defense grade. This team is terrible against the run. Flipping things over into my RB2s this week, Miles Sanders at 13 going against the Giants. The Giants have not been good against the run. 27th in rushing DVOA, 24th in fantasy points allowed. I do expect the Eagles to handle this game, win this game. And in that case, Sanders should see volume. Volume for me with Sanders is the key because there is still that chance that a guy like Jalen Hurts and even Ken Gainwell steals those inside the 5 carries from him in touchdowns. So I need to know that this team is going to be leading, have plenty of rushing volume, and I expect that here against the Giants. At 14, Travis Etienne. Man, I've been really high on him. I still expect him to be a guy that wins you your league in these final 4 weeks. But this week is a tough one, going against the Titans, who are 3rd in fantasy points allowed, 1st in rushing DVOA. Etienne's still going to get volume. He's still going to be involved as a receiver, so it does keep me from putting him, outside of my top 20 and have him as the RB14 on the week. At 15, Dameon Pierce. Pierce is coming through a stretch here where he's really struggled. One of my good buddies, I've been helping him with his fantasy team, and he has had Dameon Pierce kind of crush him the last few weeks. He's on a bad losing skid. So we've got a matchup here against the Cowboys, who 6th in fantasy points allowed. This is a team that's been in a ton of positive game scripts where teams, their opponents aren't really able to run the ball much. But they're 25th in run defense grade. You still can run the ball on this team, and there's a potential here for Houston to be able to stay in this game. I'm not really sure how, but I do think Pierce is that critical piece of their offense that they're going to be able to, or going to need to use early in this game. And there's an opportunity for him to find some success against the Cowboys. And that's their best chance of keeping this game close, is by running the football, burning clock, and trying to control time of possession. At 16, Deonta Foreman going against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to be, I think they're 4-point favorites in this game, but there's still an opportunity here for this Carolina Panthers team to stay into this game. And I think they're going to do that on the ground. They will need to do that on the ground because the Seahawks have been brutal against the run. 20th in fantasy points allowed, 24th in DVOA against the run. So this is a plus matchup for their run game here. And they've proven week in and week out that they're looking to run the ball as often as they can with Foreman and both their backs, even Chuba Hubbard as well. At 17, Raheem Mostert. Going against the Chargers, we talked about this. Both these guys are going to be must-start players this week. There's going to be a split here. Mostert will be involved. I have him as a top 20 option because this Dolphins team will be able to run the ball very, very easily on the Chargers. At 18, Leonard Fournette. Definitely not a plus matchup for the Bucs here, going against San Francisco, who are 1st in fantasy points allowed to running backs, 2nd in rushing DVOA. But here's the thing: the Bucs and their offense, it's built through checking the ball down to their backs. Brady is so concerned about being sacked, about the pressure that this offensive line has given up. The thing is this offensive line ranks really well in pressure rate allowed, but it's because Brady will not allow those pressures to come. He'll get the ball out even sooner than pressures mount on him. So expect these backs to see plenty of volume. Both of these backs to see plenty of volume through the pass game, but they still will be looking to go to the ground a little bit here. They have to. They can't be so one-dimensional. They might struggle to do it, but I think Fournette will still have good volume, and he is still the lead option in this offense. As much as Rachaad White has been involved, scored last week, it's still going to be a split, but Fournette has the edge. At 19, Isaiah Pacheco against the Denver Broncos. Denver 8th in fantasy points allowed to running backs, 17th in rushing DVOA. This is the weaker part of their defense is against the run. And Pacheco is even getting involved a little bit as a pass catcher too. McKinnon's still there, but it is good to see that from Pacheco. And I do expect in a game where they're like 9-point favorites, I believe, on the road here in Denver, that he'll see plenty of rushing volume. You could see him with 20-plus carries in this game as well and potentially find the end zone. At 20, James Conner against New England. New England, a solid run defense, 12th in run defense grade, 2nd in fantasy points allowed to running backs. They don't allow touchdowns to running backs. That has been their thing all season. I think they've only allowed like 1 or 2. That's why they rank so highly against the run. But Conner, in a game here where I think there's a potential for Arizona to win this game and definitely be competitive here, Conner should see some volume on the ground and as well. We've seen it lately as a receiver too. At 21, Najee Harris against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens' run defense is very, very good. Harris has not proven to be an efficient back on the ground, so I do have some concern here of him being able to be a top 20 option. That's why I have him at 21 this week. The Ravens 4th in fantasy points allowed, 6th in rushing DVOA, so really not a matchup where I'm very excited to play Harris. But I do expect the Steelers to be very competitive in this game with Tyler Huntley being a QB for the Ravens, and the Ravens kind of lacking a run game right now and very much talent at wide receiver. 22, Zonovan Knight. Michael Carter's status, I'd be surprised if he's available this week, so I do have it ranked as if Knight will be the RB1 with Ty Johnson and James Robinson to follow. Going against the Bills, top 10 in fantasy points allowed. They're a good run defense, 3rd in rushing DVOA, but we are seeing this team get Knight the ball both as a back and getting involved a little bit as a receiver. The Jets, won this game in their previous matchup a few weeks ago. I expect this team to be competitive against the Bills, so I do like Knight as a top 24 option against this Bills defense. 23, Rachaad White. Mentioned all the my thoughts on how this game breaks out and how these backs are used. That's really the same goes for White as it does for Fournette, but just a slight disadvantage as he does have a little bit less of the snaps for this offense. But I don't think this team has a preference in terms of 2 inside the 20 in the red zone, so I still like White as a serviceable option for you. 24, DeAndre Swift. We finally saw Swift see more opportunities, more snaps, more carries, more touches than Jamal Williams. That's huge. This is a tough matchup against Minnesota. They're 20th in fantasy points allowed, but in terms of their other graded metrics, in terms of run defense grade, they're 2nd DVOA, they're top 10. So this isn't a team that you can easily move the ball on the ground against. I don't love Swift this week, but I do think you do want to play him because I do think he's going to come into that number 1 role in this offense. Williams has been so inefficient, and I do think Swift is the preferred option for this team, and if he is closer to 100% now. 25, Latavius Murray against Kansas City. So we've got a matchup here for Murray in the Chiefs, 13th in fantasy points allowed, 18th in rushing DVOA. We saw Samaje Perine have a big week last week. Obviously, Kansas City as well, playing in their offense, are pushing for opposing QBs to check the ball down to their backs. Kansas City's giving up over 6 receptions per game to running backs. Murray has this all-encompassing role, it seems like. We saw Mike Boone for the first time last week. Didn't have much of an impact on Murray. So I still see him as a serviceable flex option for you against Kansas City. The concern is, how far behind does this how quickly does this Broncos team fall behind? Because we know they can't score many points. And if they're behind by a lot, we might see less work for Murray as a receiver. 26, Cam Akers. Akers did see a significant change in terms of the split between him and Kyren Williams last week. We saw Akers see a lot more opportunity, and we did see him, which is really important to look at, is what he's doing on passing downs. And he was working as a pass blocker. He was running some routes. So I think we're seeing a move towards him as the number 1 option for this team. Going against the Raiders defense, that is one you can definitely run on. 26th in fantasy points allowed, 21st in rushing DVOA. So Akers is the number 1, but we haven't seen great efficiency from him on the ground. Like, what did he go last week? 16 touches for like 60 yards. Maybe it was less than that. So I can't fully trust him here, but this is a plus matchup. So if you do, you do find yourself in maybe a standard league, a half PPR league, definitely throw some options at me in terms of wide receivers between him and a wide receiver, and I can help you out with that in the comments below, but he is a serviceable flex option. 27, Gus Edwards. Man, The Ravens can't run the ball right now. The Ravens offense is pretty stale in my mind, and doesn't even seem like Edwards has a control of the number one option. It's between him and Kenyon Drake, and we haven't seen Edwards take over. They're even, Justice Hill is still involved. So that's why I have Edwards backed up. I was high on him last week. It just did not pan out whatsoever. So going against the Steelers, 17th in fantasy points allowed, 12th in rushing DVOA, a middling matchup, and a middling running back room. That's where I've got Edwards this week. 28, Devin Singletary, waiting to get to these Buffalo running backs. I'm not very high on them. Like I see a matchup here against the Jets, who are very good, 6th in run defense grade, 11th in fantasy points allowed to running backs. This isn't a team that's going to be in a matchup here against the Jets where they're going to be in holding a significant lead, I don't think. And that's where this team looks to the ground game quite a bit. We saw it last week between Cook and Singletary, seeing plenty of volume. Of course, they want to protect Josh Allen, the elbow injury that he has, use the ground game a little bit more. But I do think both these guys in a tough matchup are difficult ones to play. So Singletary's my RB 28 on the week. 29, DJ Dallas. Talked about this in the waiver wire. This is a really plus matchup. I do, I have Dallas here with the expectation that he plays. I don't think Ken Walker plays. So I have him as the RB 29 against the Carolina team that's 25th in fantasy points allowed to running backs and 22nd in rushing DVOA. I still think there is going to be a split with Tony Jones as well, but I do think Dallas, if healthy, is that top option for this team. And then there is the off chance that Travis Homer becomes available as he was dealing with a knee injury last week and didn't play. Finally, at 30, Jamal Williams. I mentioned how difficult of a matchup this is traditionally for the Lions' run game against the Vikings, but they're favorites in this game. Williams' role isn't going to completely go away. There's still going to be a split here, but I don't have high expectations. He is someone I am looking to sit this week. Okay, players that are out. Obviously, we have a lot of teams on bye, so the guys that are outside my top 30 are certainly ones I don't want to play. James Cook is my RB 31. Chuba Hubbard, potentially a guy with some volume in a plus matchup against the Seahawks. Not a lot of high expectations for me as I don't see him seeing enough of a role to be serviceable. Like he could put up 60 yards on the ground and maybe a couple catches, but that's not going to be enough for you. Kareem Hunt at my RB 33. Kyron Williams, Jerick McKinnon. There's not a lot of guys to talk about that are outside my top 30 that you guys are probably wondering about. So that is the top 30 for week 14 of the fantasy football season. If you guys have players you're looking to start or sit at the running back position, again, look at the rankings. The rankings are going to tell you which running back I like more, but if there's receivers or running backs you're asking about to start, happy to help out. And as well, if you're looking to set your lineup and get some advice on setting your lineup in what could be a very, very important week for you, join the Discord. The link is down below in the description. Send me a DM, and on Friday at 4 p.m. on the OwnersBox Twitch account, we'll go through some lineups, set your lineups, give the best advice that I can heading into the final week of the regular season. So that's everything. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, and of course, go check out our friends over at Betfred. Sign up, deposit $50. They're going to give you make a $50 bet, they're going to give you $250 in free bets. Season's almost up. Make sure you go take advantage of that before the end of the regular season, before the playoffs. That link is down below as well. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.